Welcome, everyone. My name is Marie Lostis. I'm a water resource specialist from LEB, and I will be moderating your session today. The session is called Innovative Technologies for Optimization and Resilience. So the main question we will discuss today is the following. Which technologies are changing the way we optimize water resource and promote resilience? So before we start, just would like to thank Rosemary Ncube. She will be the young water professional reporter for this session. She is a junior consultant from the African Women Sanitation Professional Network in Zambia. Thank you, Rosemary. I would like also to remind you that you may post your question in the Q&A panel on the right-hand side of your screen. You see the Q&A button. So please ask your question during the presentation and we will address them at the end. The speakers will address. So today we will have normally 5 presentations. So let's start with the first one, where we will discuss water resource optimization through digital tools with Mr. Vinod Singh. Mr. Singh is a regional director for Asia and India for Jacobs, Singapore. He is a council member of the Singapore Water Association and an infrastructure committee member of the Singapore Business Federation. He is leading digital transformation in water and infrastructure sectors with technologies like Internet of Things, data analytics, artificial intelligence, and machine learning, etc., to drive efficiency, certainty, and predictability. So, Vinod, over to you.
Yep. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so let me. All right. So let me go to the presentation here mode. Yeah, so thank you and welcome all the participants and the audience on this webinar. I just started with the challenges in facing the Asian water agencies, which is too much water, too little water, and too dirty water. And if you see the water challenges, what we are trying to address is in the the current scenario is a high energy cost, decarbonization, energy cost is going up, coastal risk and the drought and floods. So too much, too little, too dirty. Water scarcity, we want to build a city resiliences, capital constraint, too little capital is chasing too many projects, aging infrastructure, aging workforce, and water contaminant. And developing country, which kind of Asia is full of developing countries or the low-income countries, longevity of leaders, multi and complex stakeholders, procurement and approval process, and water is highly undervalued commodity. So these are the challenges, and to address our issues or the challenges which every utility is trying to solve, which is overarching goal is to increase the water resources and also improve the water quality. But at the same time, they are also trying to reduce the carbon footprint, waste generation, reliance on manpower, chemical uses, and energy consumption. And how do we do that? I think this requires a paradigm shift in terms of addressing these challenges. And some of the challenges are actually, which water operators are looking at is reducing the operating cost, extend the life cycle of the existing infrastructure, or how do we stretch the existing infrastructure, less energy, enhance safety, data privacy and protection, and where the new technology or digital technology comes in picture here, and which will help us to reduce wastage due to the ability to take the real-time actions, improved operation excellence through efficiency predictions, and the 360-degree situational awareness, which is a system of system. We were talking earlier in the call is that we can derive the maximum efficiency or optimization from this digital technology if we integrate the entire water cycle, entire this project life cycle, like planning, design, construction, operations, and entire the supply chain, client, consultant, designer, technology provider, operators, funder. So if we integrate all this together, we have a huge benefits, and we call it one water approach. and the digital technology help us, enable us to do that this one water approach. I'll just go to the Singapore water system as such. Singapore, we have a very closed loop. In fact, we have accelerated, or we have the whole water cycle by using the desalination and also using the recycle reuse facilities. Singapore came out with this water map few years back. Again, this is not to talk about how Singapore has been doing, but idea is that each utility should have its digital roadmap and kind of identify how, where, and what they want to digitalize. And then the idea was for the PUB to kind of use the 5 technology enablers, which is Internet of Things, data analytics, digital twin, artificial intelligence, and autonomous systems. And these are we can go detailed talk and a lot, but we don't have a time to do that. But these are the technology which will help to deliver a PUB's mission, operational excellence with the leaner workforce, enhanced system oversight with the situational awareness with data-driven decision support system. Again, this is very important because what has happened that automation, and which we have been doing from last several years, has resulted only in the kind of very silo solutions. And what we are talking about is like having a very system approach so that we can fuse the data from various sources and create the insights and create that database solutions which will help us monetize those data in a greater way. And this is again, so that was from utility perspective, but utilities also kind of create the infrastructure. And one of the biggest infrastructure, this is about the plants or the linear project or pipelines, and how do we use those projects during the delivery so that whatever we create is become available during operations. And we call it digital delivery, which we have been kind of experimenting, which we have been trying to deliver one of the plant here called TWRP, Tuas Water Reclamation Plant, 4D, 5D, and 6D. And idea is to create the integration across the supply chain and across the planning, design, construction, operations. So there is no loss of data when the stakeholder changes. The data flows through and becomes available at end of the plant, at end of the construction, and can be used for the asset management, and also is combined with the census data. It will become a kind of asset management digital twin, and as well the process digital twin, which will be able to use it effectively and use it for the very optimized operation of the plant. Digital delivery, I talk about this one is that 5D, 6D, and this has been actually used here on the TWRP. And the 4D is about improved construction planning, which is a sequence, the scheduling, which is linked to the model. So instead of reading the 5-7 pages of the the Primavera or the Microsoft project each line, you can see through the whole digital the model based the scheduling. The 5D is about the cost. Here you can change the model. It will result into the with a very online and very live cost change in the cost data. 6D is the quality of data transfer to client. So asset is become a part of the asset management tool. So that is used throughout this life cycle as such. Also, what we have used here is a model-based tendering. So we have not submitted or produced any 2D drawings which was submitted to the contractor or the bidders. Only a model was submitted so that they had a better appreciation of the scope of work which is required for them to do, instead of trying to understand the scope of work. So this is a digital delivery or integrated digital delivery which has allowed the utilities to kind of create the right product, do the digital rehearsal before it goes for construction, and becomes data available right from the planning, design, construction, becomes available in the operations for effective use throughout the life cycle. So, and this is during the whole during the whole design review, so that the operators or the users can integrate this the model and review it from the operational perspective and the construction perspective as well. So this is another tool. Another is, this was a digital delivery, and when the plant gets constructed, how do we use digital technology to kind of optimize energy, chemicals, the lean workforce. There another work which we have done in the Australia, which is the AI-based coagulation system. Every water plant, they use the coagulation and the chemicals. What we have done is that normally it's done the jar test, and the jar test is done every week or once in 2 weeks. But our raw water quality changes every few minutes. But so our doses remains underutilized or overutilized, or overdoses or underdoses, rather than the actual dose required, because the water quality changes over time. It's very frequently. So idea was to use the AI-based coagulation system, train the model, use the spectroscopy, so that you have online measurement or the whole fingerprinting of your raw water quality, and use that information to kind of derive the optimal doses based on the few criteria, and so that your chemical doses is in pace with your changing raw water quality. And we predict this will be saving up in at least 8 to 15% in terms of chemical dosing, chemical cost. So this is not a very sophisticated point kind of solutions, and can be developed and used for all the plants. Our digital twin, another work is which we have been working with the PUB here, is a digital twin for the Changi water reclamation plant, and this has combined IT, OT, and ET, and idea, and which result into the better capital planning, operational and maintenance, and also help us to kind of do the scenario analysis and prepare for the emergency preparedness and response. This is the benefit which we have kind of implemented, the tune which we have implemented at the CWRP. This is the first time been done where we have got hydraulics, process, and the controls. They are all acting together on H2O molecules. They are not separately done and combined by the human intelligence. So these are in a single model as such. And this is not data driven. This is a mechanistic model. This is a physics or the science driven model. So there's a lot of accuracy compared to the data driven model as such. And this leads to the higher productivity, providing the operator real time operational insights, and also it speed up the troubleshooting if something goes wrong. It enhances the resiliency of operation by building the predictive capability. This acts like a flight simulator and can be used for the training the operators without working on the live plant as such, right? So it's a functionality is that this help us to do the scenario evaluation, what if analysis, process monitoring, looking back on a daily basis. This model compare the predicted versus the actual or observed performance, and the flag the unusual operational attention, so that operator can go back and check why it has happened, and also train the model or train correct its the operation regime. Also, it's a performance prediction looking forward. This works on look for after 5 days into the future and estimate likelihood of the scenario or defined event, so the operator can take a control or correct his operations so as to avoid any future non-compliance discharge or optimize the energy consumption as such. Another project which has helped kind of use of digital technology in solving the real issues and challenges. Singapore has wanted to do this water conservation, and the idea was to how do you reduce, or how do we nudge the people to kind of conserve water? And they say, right, what gets measured gets done. So this is ideas to provide the people on their phone their water consumption every hour. And this project was evolved advanced metering infrastructure, putting the smart meters into the entire Singapore customer 1.5 million. So this is a project for 300,000 to start with, and this has been kind of a start. This has been more than 1,000 meters have been installed now. In the last I started with 2 years, 1,000 meters has been installed, and this is going to get momentum now. And if you see that this project also collect huge amount of data, and the data need to be monetized and could be monetized for the various aspects of the whole operational, utility operations. If you see that here, from early to 1 to 3 years and future needs, this data, which is coming from the AMI or the smart meters, fused with the many other operational data from the utilities, and you can create huge knowledge, and knowledge can result into the huge savings for the utilities, and also the certainty of the event, predictability, and operational excellence. And this is some of the benefits from the day one, and also some of the benefits which will result as we start fusing the data from the other sources of other sources within the utilities. So thank you. That's what I have.
Thank you very much, Vino. Thank you for all this example on how to use digital technology in the water sector. Thank you. For the second presentation, we'll have Mr. Wouter de Hamer, who will present a decision support framework on riverine plastic waste collection technologies. Mr. de Hamer is a director of business development water, APAC at Royal Ashconning DHV. His fields of expertise are water management, flood resilience, and coastal development. He earned his Master of Science in Integrated Water Resource Management at Twente University in the Netherlands, and he has gained extensive international experience in European, African, and Asian countries, including Nigeria, Indonesia, the Philippines, and Singapore. Over to you, Mr. Wouter.
Thank you, Marie, for the introduction. Let me share my slides. Right, I think you should be able to see my slides now. Is that correct?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. As Marie introduced myself, I don't have to do it anymore, but I'm going to talk about a decision support framework. On riverine plastic waste collection technology that we recently launched and is available for everyone. As we all know, plastic in our ecosystem, in our river systems, in our oceans is actually quite harmful for the ecosystem and also for human health. And unfortunately, Southeast Asia and South Asia, they have the most rivers that are the top polluters in the world. You can see on my map that the red and orange dots are mostly concentrated in this part of the world. Next to the bigger rivers, recent research has also shown that a lot of smaller rivers from urban areas in our cities, our Asian cities, are contributing significantly to the global pollution of plastics in the oceans. Now, this is of course a very visible problem, and everybody has seen these pictures with plastic floating around in the urban areas. And also the ADB and the World Bank and other donors have recognized the problem and have made a lot of funds available to tackle this issue on plastics. Also, national governments in Asia are very active on this. But of course, it's not only what you see, right? It's also a whole awareness campaign about don't throwing plastic in on the streets or on the rivers. There's a whole process of waste collection and how to organize this. But the end solution, or there's also an end of pipe solutions, which is just collecting the plastic from the rivers. So it's just a small step in the total process that need to be improved. If we look into all the technologies that came to the market over the past, say, 5 to 10 years, it's becoming bigger and bigger and more complex. And the options vary from very low tech, just having a fence in a small creek, for example, to very advanced systems with solar panels and automated systems that do all the work themselves. Of course, there's a big price difference between those technologies. Now, if you talk to the suppliers, of course, their systems are the best in the world. But now governments need to make a decision. Okay, what is the most suitable technology for my specific river or my specific lake or my specific drain in an urban area? The environmental conditions, they differ quite a lot. So we have made a decision support system to help governments decide what is the most suitable technology for my specific location. Just a little bit of background. We have been assisting several suppliers in Southeast Asia in several countries in deploying these kind of systems, and also doing several studies around it, like environmental impact assessments, hydrological studies, where to implement technologies and have the major impact. But Royasco and DHV has also done quite a number of studies for like the World Bank and ADB on, okay, where is the pollution coming from and how does it end up in the rivers? So we were quite well positioned to make this decision support system. The aim of the system is to provide a foundation for local and national governments to take informed actions and make cost-effective decisions. It was a World Bank funded. It's a World Bank funded system, but it's free to use and publicly accessible for everyone. You can follow the link on this slide, and you can go to the system and you can use it yourself. In the next slides, I'll just explain a bit about the system itself and how it's set up, so you can appreciate the background of it. Actually, we did a global search on all the technologies in the world that are now available that collect plastics and waste out of the water. We came to a list of about 130 technologies that are available. We did interviews and site visits to assess the technologies. And at a certain moment we said, okay, we only select technologies that have already been proven in the field. So they need to have a certain technology readiness level to be adopted in our database. So in the back end of the decision support system is a database with all these technologies. We have structured the technologies in several classifications. So you have, we call it stationary extraction. These are quite advanced systems that do everything themselves. They collect the system out of the water, put it in a bin, and then you float the device to the shore, and there the bins will be collected by a waste management company. You have fixed systems and floating systems. The second classification is stationary concentration, which is basically like booms in the water or cages in the water, where plastic is collected and concentrated, but then you still need a kind of excavator to remove the plastic from that location and move it to another area. The third classification of technologies is mobile. So these are vessels. You can move them around. You have manual with somebody who is steering it. And you have semi-automated systems that work on, for example, solar energy. Now, that's all in the background of this tool. And the tool works a bit like booking.com. You're probably familiar if you're going on holiday. You fill in several values for criteria. This system works the same. So we have set up three kind of main criteria: technical criteria, where a government agency or somebody who's interested in technologies can fill in, okay, is there, for example, navigation in my river? Yes or no? What are the water levels in my river? How do they fluctuate over the year? What is the width of my creek or river? You can fill it in. The second criteria is efficiency. So what kind of plastics do we encounter in your water body? Is it just plastics, or are there also cows and trees floating around? Very important information for the robustness of your system and efficiency. And the last criteria is sustainability. That's more about your maintenance costs and sustainability criteria related to CO2 emissions, for example. If you fill in all these criteria, then it filters out from these over 80 technologies, it filters out the best suitable technologies for your specific location. I just want to show now how it looks like. It's in an internet browser. So if you go to this link, you will arrive at this login page. You can make an account. So all the information that you have been filling in before is stored, and you can retrieve it going forward. You can fill in your location, your river characteristics, and then you will go through a questionnaire on your specific river. And this is just some examples. You see some drop-down menus with questions. You can fill in, for example, the width of the water body. There's a drop-down menu like 10 meters, 20 meters, or 30 meters, for example. If you don't know or you're not certain, you can also leave it blank. Then it's not taken into account in the filter system. Once you have gone through this questionnaire, then you arrive at the resulting page. And here, in this example, in this snapshot, you see that based on the criteria given, 8 technologies are suitable for this purpose out of the database of 89 technologies. You can then click on these technologies, similar again like booking.com, and then you will go to an information page with information of the supplier, some more detailed information of the technology, how it works. And if you are a government agency, you could then contact this supplier and ask for a quotation, for example, or a presentation of the technology and how it may fit for a solution for your river. You can also see what criteria you filled in on the left bar. You can also change it on the fly. So if you, in this case, the position of the location of the river is upstream. If it turns out to be downstream later on, you can just change downstream, and the system will automatically refilter and come up with new technologies. Of course, this decision support system is just the first step in the whole process. It gives some guidance to government agencies to do a first filtering, understand what kind of solutions should we think of. But then the next stages are, okay, what is my budget availability? Not only CAPEX, but also OPEX, because these systems, they have operating costs. And of course, we see very often that the CAPEX component is interesting, but to keep them operating, we need quite a lot of budget for OPEX as well. And very important, to ensure a well-functioning system, we need to have proper institutional setup. We need to have especially a link with the land-based waste management systems and operators. We can take the waste from the river and put it on the riverbank, but if it stays there, it's quite useless to remove it from the water. We need to have an operator that collects that waste and preferably also recycles it and make it a recyclable economy again. So in that sense, this is the first step to give guidance to government agencies to start discussion. And we have also provided a list, a kind of checklist for the government agencies on what components they need to think of as well, like environmental impact assessment, like the connection with the operators, etc. That was my presentation. I hope you liked it, and I'm available for the questions and answers later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wouter. Solid waste management is such an important topic, right? So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So now may I welcome Gian Al-Jdifad to present the role of emerging technology in a highly vulnerable region, battle with climate change needs, barriers to access, and successes. So Gian is a biochemist and oceanographer in training, affiliated with Hill Utilities as a technology consultant. A role includes identifying disruptive technology and carrying out due diligence in support of island innovation programs. Prior to join ISLE, she served as a science research specialist in a project baselining emerging organic pollutant in natural and engineering system in the Philippines. Gian is passionate about the interplay between water security, climate resilience, and how data-driven methodologies can help at-risk nations, like the Philippines, implement policies and projects to better manage water resources. She also advocates for stronger communication efforts to inspire a citizen science approach and collectively disseminate key messages on environmental issues to water agents. So Gian, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marie. Let me just share my screen. Can I confirm that you're now able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, and thank you very much to everyone who are joining us for this session. In 2013, Typhoon Haiyan swept across Asia, and by the time it left the Philippine area of responsibility, more than 1 million houses were destroyed, 5 million people were displaced, and of course, lives were lost. And most importantly, 95.5 billion in pesos was the total cost of the damage left by Typhoon Haiyan. Interestingly, at the same time, Felix Aike, soon to be the co-founder of Comunidad, is working in the IT sector overseas. And following what happened, he decided to compile cyclone reports, and as an individual consultant, share it through email to different clients. And then he saw that more and more clients are interested in this because, of course, it has an impact on their businesses. Little did he know that that work would actually be or would set the foundation for putting together an environmental intelligence platform called Comunidad. So last year, Comunidad secured $1 million in seed funding, but more importantly, their success in being integrated in the disaster risk strategies in the Philippines, India, Cambodia, and Vietnam is a success story that I know we want to replicate more. So when we speak of climate resilience, this makes us happy. This has an impact, but even more impact would be visible to everyone if we are able to replicate the success story of Comunidad. How do we do this? I would say by understanding the climate resilience technology ecosystem in Asia. So first thing we need to discuss is the region's needs. I mean, I have here a map showing the temperature differences in the whole of in the whole of Asia, and you would see that it varies from region to region. In Asia, we have regions that have a much steeper temperature delta, meaning that depending on the season, if it's El Nino or La Nina, they could either experience heat waves and droughts or torrential rains, basically. Then we also have the tropical region. The tropical region more or less has a constant temperature delta. However, these nations or countries happen to be archipelagic in nature, and of course, the threat of sea level rise is always there. And then finally, we have regions in Asia that are experiencing heightened droughts and bushfires. So yeah, in a nutshell, it's very different from each other. In terms, this next slide shows you the different manifestations for different regions in Asia. And you would see that it is consistent with what we've observed in the previous slide. It's very much different. It varies across the regions. One thing to note for water stress, I know initially you would think the risk is decreased. Does this mean water stress is not an issue? The thing to note about this data set is that it takes into consideration areas wherein precipitation is high, since the model is able to forecast water stress more effectively for the wet region versus the arid region. So that that being said, it still holds true that water stress is something that is we need to face or we need to address when we speak about climate resilience in Asia. So the key points from the previous slides is that we have a very different climate landscape, and we expect the technology needs to be very different depending on the region. That means that the solution needs to be sort of customized, or the solution would understand what happens on the ground, and we need to look inwards towards homegrown startups that are actually designed to address the situation on the ground or the problems that are happening firsthand. This next slide now shows us the readiness of the Asian innovation ecosystem in terms of climate resilience. So on the right-hand side, previously we said we look at homegrown startups, but the question remains, do we have enough? Do we have startups that can actually address climate resilience? And if you would look at the right-hand side, we did a very high-level sweep of technologies that are able to address common themes when we speak of climate resilience. So energy, mobility, agriculture, waste, and water and the ocean. And you would see that in each theme, there is at least one startup company that we've identified that is able to provide a solution. And the good thing about it is these technology companies, they are local companies, so they are based in Asia, and a lot are in Southeast Asia. Why is this important that we address all the themes related to climate resilience? It's because on the left-hand side, these are the main or the specific themes about climate resilience that are of concern to Asia. Number one is GHG emissions. I'm sure everyone is familiar with the COP26 report, wherein Asia it was reported that Asia is responsible for more than 50% of GHG emissions. And of course, while that number could be open for debate in terms of the hows and the whys, I believe that we can do better in terms of managing our emissions. Second one is sea level rise. We've seen drastic changes, and we've seen that more and more cities are being flooded, and it's because of sea level rise. Deforestation is a common theme. Normally, when we speak about water security and ensuring a secure water future, basically, we try to look from the water treatment plant to the distribution network all the way to the consumer's tap. However, it's also good to look upstream, like how are our watersheds doing? Are they affected by certain environmental phenomena in terms of the quality of the water that would be available, and are they drying up? So deforestation is definitely a key topic, and most especially that biodiversity in Asia is very high, and we want to keep it that way, and deforestation has an effect on that. Finally, a very complex theme, urbanization and population growth. It's complex because it covers a lot or touches upon different themes. We have waste, because of course more people would mean more waste generated in different aspects. Agriculture, because we need to support more people in terms of the food supply chain. Transportation, in moving people from one place to another, are we being energy efficient? And finally, of course, the energy efficiency and the energy use are required to drive or to keep these urban places going. Further to the availability of technologies, we can say, yes, we have available technologies, but more importantly, the question remains, are we able to make these technologies available to the sectors and to the actors that need them most? So how are we doing in terms of the uptake? It's a very complex discussion. 10 minutes won't be enough to even cover just this. And I believe during this forum, we also have specific sessions dedicated to the financing side. But I'll try to give you a high-level overview. In terms of the technologies that we have been reviewing, we could actually easily use this matrix to classify them into 4 categories: invent, reboot, reimagine, and re-engineer. Technologies under invent, they take deep tech approaches. They are fundamentally new, and they would need strong R&D infrastructure and support. So this is important for governments. So in identifying startups or supporting startups that are in this category, funneling funds towards universities and having the university have policies and strong infrastructure to help them spin out of the university would be good. Reboot technologies improve products, so that with new low carbon technologies. So because there's a higher risk, since there's something new that they are introducing, a healthy VC environment would be very good, because they are looking into getting investment, and probably they have a prototype, but then nothing more than that. So they need investment with a higher risk so that they can scale up. On the left-hand side, reimagine technologies. They're there, they know their technology. However, they still haven't commercialized it yet, or they haven't done a commercial pilot. And this is where accelerators and incubators are very important players. They need market education, help in building their business case to make sure that the uptake would be there. And finally, the re-engineer category. This is geared towards technologies that are ready. They are commercially ready. They know their business case. They just need piloting opportunities to be connected with whichever sector that the technology can be applied. And for these schemes, we need accelerated deployment, such as the trial reservoir. So the trial reservoir is a platform that takes 100% of the risk, for example, for piloting solutions that would help water utilities towards achieving carbon neutrality. So schemes such as these are very helpful for re-engineered types of technologies. Before I end my discussion, I just want to quickly share additional case studies of successful startups in basically in Southeast Asia. The first one is e-fishery in Indonesia. We chose this because they obtained the largest funding for an aquaculture startup, not only in Asia, but actually in the world. This is an automatic fish and shrimp feeder. And by digitizing fish and shrimp farms, they were able to reduce water pollution by 30% because you are able to control the feeding of fish and shrimp. But more importantly, farmers are being taken care of. So they have reported 45% increase in the farmers' income because of this technology. Second one is Water Roam. It's based in Singapore. It's a water filter that can be easily deployed in times of emergency or for remote areas. This technology is successful and because they were mentored and incubated by NUS Enterprise. So you could see that a strong support, even from that university level, can actually help uptake of the startup. And now they have been providing clean potable water to 15,000 people in Cambodia, Indonesia, Nepal, Pakistan, Malaysia, Myanmar, and Vanuatu. So the key takeaways that I want to share with this presentation. Firstly, Asia's climate innovation ecosystem is growing. One could say that it's nascent compared to the rest of the world, but it's definitely there, and it's very active and thriving. Second, a multi-stakeholder approach towards accelerating uptake is needed, because this is important because we want the technologies, or we want to funnel disruption into the sectors that need them most. We do not want disruptive technologies. Disruptive technologies, they're not meant to be appreciated for their novelty or for how good they are. They are meant to be integrated into the current systems so that we are able to combat climate change. And finally, leverage Asia's strong position in the digital space. Asia is poised to take over being the #1 digital hub in the world. And so we can tap on that. I mean, two of the three case studies that I've shared with you today have a digital aspect to it. And that means that we are doing really well on the digital space, and that is something we can leverage on. Finally, we are presented with a challenge that is climate change, but I believe that for every challenge, we can see an opportunity in it, and that is a climate of change. Changing the way that we think, our mindset towards the acceptance and uptake of disruptive technologies, we can then make Asia Pacific lead the pack in terms of opening up and welcoming disruptive technologies in order to combat climate resilience. So yeah, that's it. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Jiwan. Thank you for this very nice overview of the Asian startups environment and a nice example. Thanks. So now let's go to the next presentation that will be done by Mr. Daniel Martens on a multi-level approach to developing climate resilience strategies using data and digital technology. So Daniel is a climate resilience lead for Royal Ashconning DHV, climate resilience portfolio of digital solution. It is a suite of software and data solutions aimed to help organizations better understand the exposure, vulnerabilities, and risk their physical assets, people, and supply chains may be faced with due to climate-related hazards today and for various climate scenarios. Building on RHD DHV 140 years of expertise, he helps organizations make well-informed decisions in the development of mitigation and adaptation strategies to safeguard both their business and the communities they serve to physical or transitional climate-related risk. As a coastal engineer, He has been involved in numerous projects assessing the impact of climate hazards on physical infrastructure and coastal communities, including the assessment of climate change and particularly sea level rise on the island state of Singapore, where he is currently based. Daniel, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Marie. Let me share my screen and you let me know what you can see here.
Yes, perfect.
Yeah, okay. So today I'll share a little bit about how we can work at various levels when developing climate resilience strategies. And my focus will particularly be on the use of data and digital technologies, digital tools in climate risk assessment journeys, with a primary emphasis on adaptation. So we are all aware of the numerous natural hazards that may impact our daily lives. Some of the most prevalent indicated here, such as drought and floods. What many of us still struggle to realize, however, is that other than the direct impact these hazards have, the cascading effects tend to be even more far-reaching, affecting water and food security, and impacting the livelihoods of producers upstream the supply chain, as well as consumers downstream the supply chain. So, well, heat waves and drought have caused water reserves to fall below critical levels in recent years. And some of you may have experienced the direct consequences of that through water rationing. All of us, however, have in some way experienced the indirect consequences due to affected food supply and thus rising costs of fresh produce. Generally, we tend to tackle these risks only when they indirectly affect us. And when we do, we often focus on a subset of the affected system. The aim is, however, to address climate resilience more holistically and work towards strategies that span multiple levels. And in order to do so, we will have to be able to navigate our way through climate risk assessments in an efficient manner while developing the required level of resilience. While there may be more than one approach, in this example I have illustrated here, our most common three-layer approach starts with where we go from a screening level assessment to prioritize high-risk locations to a high-level assessment, and eventually to a detailed or more site-specific assessment. So in the next few slides, I will give a brief example of an application at each level before closing off with how this all fits in our overall climate resilience journey. Using global experience and in-house data, we are able to make transparent for all major hazards what the exposure at any location in the world was in the past, is right now, and will be in the future. This type of screening allows us to quickly identify which assets or communities are exposed to what hazard, regardless of their geographical location. So as we see in this illustration, we may have a variety of infrastructure assets, communities, or even supply chains that face different types of hazards depending on their geographical location. Based on a curated global data set of all major hazards, we have developed a broad climate hazard database based on which we can easily develop dashboards for decision-making so that we can in an instant see the exposures of dozens, hundreds, or thousands of locations to all these climate hazards. We can do so for existing locations, but also when, for instance, considering new infrastructure developments. So in this image, we can see an overview of the exposure of nearly all dams in Southeast Asia to climate-related hazards, indexed and color-coded for each hazard. This allows us to easily and quickly identify those dams that are most at risk to certain hazards and assess them in more detail. We could also do this for other critical infrastructure, as shown here for the Philippines and represented in a slightly different manner. What we see is a geographical map on the top right of all our locations of interest, and on the bottom we find a ranking of all our locations, showing only the top 3 assets here. These could comprise either physical infrastructure assets, but also communities. And based on their location, they get an exposure scoring for all the hazards in our database, as shown in the columns, which you see, and by the colored dots. So in this figure, we can easily see that our areas of interest are most at risk to tropical cyclones or typhoons and floods, which may or may not be associated. But that can all be filtered depending on your location and depending on the needs, and of course, our domain knowledge. If we complement this screening level assessment with further information, be it global data or perhaps national warning systems, we are able to take it a step further and monitor all the different locations of interest on their exposure. This is where you can see the first signs of a near real-time decision support system. In this slide, we show the ability to set thresholds for certain climate parameters, such as heat, which would then trigger warnings for those locations where this threshold is exceeded. At a high level, we are already able to provide more detail, depending on the data available to us and the methods we apply. We can still rely on open source data and national data sets, but this is where we generally start applying numerical models, such as our own global flood risk tool or other third-party solutions. We run simulations based on measurements to validate the impact of certain hazards or specific events, and moreover, the cascading effects. This allows us to start identifying the impact on individual assets or communities, as shown here for houses in the vicinity of a river that could be affected in case of the river floods. This is generally where we already get insights on the asset level, how much an individual asset is at risk to certain hazards, and we can start working on more broad-scale potential adaptation measures, which could, for instance, be physical measures, but they could also be through insurance. Such analysis can also be part of an integrated water resource management plan, or perhaps a more specific dam safety management plan to ensure water supply. Once we start localizing our assessment, we dive into the level of detail that is generally required to implement adaptation measures. These measures and strategies will address the local needs, taking into account the environmental conditions as well as affected stakeholders. Measures can be blue, green, gray, or a combination thereof. While our preference is, of course, to focus on building with nature, nature-based solutions alone don't always provide the desired level of resilience. In this example, we developed a flood protection strategy to help make Manila Bay, its vulnerable residents and ecosystems more resilient, taking into account present and future challenges, and emphasizing sustainable solutions at a very detailed level. So while in some locations, nature-based solutions such as reefs, mangroves, green embankments were appropriate, elsewhere, surge gates and breakwaters or other gray infrastructure were still deemed a more appropriate fit. So with all this, we make these decisions based on a combination of our in-house expertise, a vast amount of data sets carefully curated by subject matter experts, as well as proprietary and third-party digital tools to streamline our workflows. So as my second last slide, what we have seen in this brief presentation is how we can address climate risks at various levels. The assessments that I just showed are, however, only part of the broader resilience journey. And it is important to keep this in mind when developing climate resilience strategies. So without going in further detail on this very complex image here, my emphasis in this presentation and for sake of this conference was primarily on our approach to develop insights for adaptation strategies, right? Highlighted in the green parts of this graphic, going from looking at the physical risks to the adaptation solutions. Now, climate risk and resilience are broad definitions that require much more careful thought and analysis. I didn't, for instance, focus on transition risks and or mitigation through reduction of our water and carbon footprint, regulatory compliance, and so forth, which are invaluable steps to ensure successful transformation of your organization under a continuously changing climate. Now, with that, I hope you found this very brief introduction insightful. And I would like to invite all of you to reach out with questions or remarks so we can embark on this climate resilience journey together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daniel. The tool you presented seems very helpful also for emergency preparedness before the disaster occurs. So thank you for this presentation.
Thank you.
Now it's the last presentation. So we will discuss river basin performance optimization with Mr. Amit Mishra. Amit serves as the Vice President Marketing at Vassar Labs. With his 14 years of technology experience, he believes in working for a sustainable future. He has done a postgraduate course from University of Florida on sustainable agriculture and land management. And apart from that, he has a degree in mathematics and an MBA specializing in data science. So over to you, Amit.
And thank you for the wonderful introduction. Let me share my screen and start my presentation. So I hope it's visible and I'm audible, right?
Yes.
Great. So with the interest of time, I will directly jump onto the presentation today. And we will be speaking about river basin performance optimization today. So before that, I will, really congratulate all the fellow speakers. Being in last comes a liberty to acknowledge speakers, and we have a lot of material to conclude. So thanks a lot to all of you providing me such insights. And even in the morning session of the other track where we are listening to Monica and Thomas from ADB, we heard like how funding in water can transform the entire, people livelihood on the planet. It has a greatest potential because of the water, food, energy nexus. So let's start and understand where all these starts. So when we talk about river basins, they are living organisms. So they are not something static. They are very dynamic. In our culture, we even call all the rivers mostly as a mother status they have. We call them as a mother goddess, and we have plenty of rituals to keep her happy and healthy. And I believe that would be pretty much true for all other countries and geographies as well. But in the recent past, human activities like urbanization, then deforestation, industrialization, and on top of it, the climate change has, very adverse impact on the river basins. So they have prospered us for the centuries, and now it's our time to give it back. It's our time to take care of them with advancement in technology like remote sensing, AI, and big data. So when we talk about river basins, they are very complex and dynamic system, often with users having conflicting demands and various level of influence on the resource. And in case of transboundary river, it even gets more complicated and sometimes dangerous and frightening, like we observed recently in Nile Basin with the Ethiopian Great Resonance Dam. We all have witnessed the conflict between Egypt and Ethiopia. So river basin have a primary role to fulfill development activities of any nation. And with that, because it's a central element in the nexus of food, water, and energy, all are interconnected. If we don't have water, all other foundation pillars will automatically get distorted. So this arises a need that the allocations has to be properly planned, the governance should be transparent, and the conflict must be managed. Now for this, I will thank to technology because now we have tech in place, so we can understand the climate risk. We can understand what kind of transition a basin is going through to understand the impact of climate as a flood, lossage, and what kind of activities can be done to minimize the losses and maximize the productivity. So with tech in hand, we now are able to have the location specific understanding of water bodies, because that's very hyper local. Every basins are different with compared to, so there is no one size fit to all when we talk about river basins. Even we have deployed various implementations in India, and all of those implementations are pretty much different from one another because of their geographical constraints. So with the power of IoT, satellite data, and AI/ML modeling, we are able to basically provide us application which can be customized to a hyperlocal scale and data ready. So that we are calling as EquaWise. So with this EquaWise, we can create any kind of water in systems and run the simulations to get the right outcome. So you can see here in the bottom, we have a data layer which basically integrates all the data. Then it comes to analysis and ultimately it gives the result. Once we apply this for the river basin, we are able to, understand the allocation and accounting. So by integrating the river basin characteristic and dynamic data of flow and weather, The platform can provide tool to manage water allocation, its budgeting, accounting, planning and providing release schedules for reservoir operations, providing near real-time monitoring with analytics, and ensure sustainable dam operation by enabling dam safety and early warning systems. So here on the screen, we can see how the user inputs are coming. These inputs can be automated. Some inputs are user specific. So either it will come from automated source or from a manual entry. It will go to model builder where it will be operated, and then it will go to the final, with the help of mathematical algorithms, we will conclude. Then it will go to the feasibility check with respect to the reservoir operation policies and other constraints. And finally, as an output, we get a reservoir release plan, like how we should operate our reservoirs so that it's sustainable. The platform which we're proposing is scalable to any size. It is cloud enabled, and it works on a ERP approach basically to have a cohesion among stakeholders. So now when coming the demo, we have implemented it for Narmada River Basin, which is like 14 major dams are there. It's 800 miles, over 800 miles long river in India, crossing 5 states. So what exactly we have did here, that it enables people, or you can say all the stakeholders, to see the river basin current status in near real time. And we have seen in my previous slide that we're talking about different kind of data. So it enables those data to be directly integrated inside the platform with the help of pre-built form and various different categories of data. So people can come, upload the data, and then this data can go into the model and they can simulate the results in real time, ultimately giving the reservoir planning and operations insights. So right now what we are seeing is after that we are generating the water allocation for the state, where we are seeing the state level water withdrawals, the audit, and different their respective allocations and withdrawal to understand how much they are entitled to, how much they have received. So basically it's bringing all the stakeholders to one common platform to have cohesive management of water resources. To achieve this, we have built an online optimization tool for nonlinear elements of river basin, bringing all the physical constraints like hydraulic constraint, network constraint, operational goals, demand objective, flood, hydropower, and then solving them to get the desired outcome for optimized performance. So say, for example, it has a reservoir modeling, talking about different elements of reservoirs, then river reach and tributaries modeling, then canal system modeling, and then there are optimization model with operational constraints. And then this goes to the model. So this is the same which we have seen earlier, a different representation. That data comes, it goes to model builder, it get output, it's generated, and ultimately it's got validated and reiterated through this process again and again to finally achieve one output which is acceptable by all stakeholders with respect to the policy and guidelines. And the beauty of this platform that it's a web-based, user can set up their model from anywhere. They can work in cohesion, and being on cloud, it's keep running online automatically. There is autonomous model running on cloud. Say, for example, what will be my current inflow? That depends upon the current rainfall, weather parameters, current release happening from upstream, and the current reservoir status. So by integrating all this data, it's always in near real time, providing actionable items right away. So now we are going to see the demo of model builder, how it works. So here we can see that this is the current dashboard, providing data inputs, and then at a reservoir level, on a state level, on a project level, all these details can be seen in the real time. And now if somebody wanted to go ahead and do the new model or change the model, they can go to the model builder, they can create a new model by adding the variables. And once they have added the variable, they can go ahead in the report and check out. So you can see on the screen right now, they are changing the variables. Once they have changed, they can basically go to the reservoir operation model. They can view the result, and the result will be populated in the same way. So it's gives them result immediately as per the new model. They don't have to wait. So it provides hydrologists and the model builders a tool to see the output in near real time, giving them better tools to work in cohesion. A similar adoption has been implemented in Telangana, where we are managing a part of Godavari Basin. So what you are seeing right now is the movement of water as it dots. And then in the below, these lines represents colorful lines, red, green represents different allocations for different day. So what exactly happening here is the water needs to be transported because of the gravitational elevation. This area is uneven, so it needs pumping activity. So there is a huge mega pumps of 8 gigawatts. And this area, we have to fulfill the irrigation demand and other drinking water demand, industrial demand, and there are multiple reservoirs in this. So by understanding the current demand of agriculture, industrial, all in the near real time by using satellite data and your ERP data and field data, and then understanding the current water levels, your weather, this get automated, and it suggests how you have to operate your reservoir real time with your lift mechanism so that your production capacity is maximum and electrical consumption is minimum. So based on this decision support system helps authorities to plan their water resources in a way that they achieve sustainable operations for such a mega project. So this is, by the way, this is world's biggest lift scheme, lifting around 240 TMC of water annually. So with this, I will conclude my presentation. And with a final remark, I will say that the river basins are fundamental units of our life. And at the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals also identify the clean water, sustainable cities, and climate action. All these three would not be fulfilled if we don't have a healthy river basin. So it's time to act. And we are proud to be in the forefront for this crisis and helping with the technologies for the authorities in a way that they can act now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amit, and thank you for presenting this model. Indeed, now we know that water is not infinite resources, so allocating it fairly between all the stakeholders will become more and more critical. Thank you for this presentation. And thank you all. So we reach the end of the 5 presentation now. So we have about 20-25 minutes for question and answer. So let me bring some questions from the audience, from the Q&A panel. And the first one will be for Daniel. How important is technology foresight in these climate resilience strategies? And the second question from the same person is, since the data sets are sourced from the subject matter experts, as mentioned, how often is the data revised, updated in your model? Thank you, Daniel.
Very, very interesting question. Am I audible? I am, right?
Yes.
Yeah, very interesting question. Thank you for that. So I'll primarily share my own opinion, which is honestly, so throughout the presentation that I gave, my emphasis was obviously on using data and digital tools, but it was on the approach, right? The methodology, kind of. So my own opinion is primarily that while I believe that technology foresight is important, as it is kind of a guidance for us to understand where we're headed in terms of technological advances and how we prepare ourselves, not ourselves, but also the communities that we serve, so to say, and the companies that we try to uphold. At the end of the day, the technologies are tools, right? Or at least the data and the digital tools are enabling us to carry out a certain, a certain strategy, or to follow a certain approach. I'm not sure whether I should elaborate further on that. But basically what I'm trying to say is that I do think it's important, but I think the methodology is more important. And what I've seen personally is that matters often get quite complicated when we emphasize the technologies more than the methodologies. So what you get is people, especially the organizations and the communities that we serve, tend to get lost quite easily when we overthrow them with the amount of different technologies that there are. And I think it is up to us as subject matter experts to instead guide them through the process, right? And then the technologies come into play where may be and at the right time. So in 5-10 years from now, there may be different tools than we'll be using today. I hope that answers your question. And then the second one was on updating the data, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, revising and updating the data. How often?
So there's no fixed number there. Currently, what we do have is we basically source the data, right? Which is a mix of open source data, in-house data, because we carry out quite a lot of projects globally. And we also run operational systems, right? For certain, especially like localized areas, some certain big cities, so to say. So what I said, open source data, project data, in-house, operational, and on top of that, sometimes partnerships with data providers. That data is then scrutinized on a regular basis, right? As much as possible. So depending on where it comes from, you may get an automated update, right? If it's open source, that's less frequently updated. If there's a specific project, that's immediately ingested in our database, but also through the partnerships with data providers, we get continuous information that needs to be revised and fitted, right, retrofitted into our database. Again, maybe not a very clear answer. There's not a fixed number, I would say, not a fixed frequency. It really depends kind of on new data that comes in as of now. But obviously, we continuously check that, right? We have to, it's our responsibility to make sure that whatever we provide, that is the latest data there is. Is that a clear answer, or?
Yes, thank you, Daniel. I think you also replied to another question, which was, where is the climate information that feeds the database being sourced from? Understood is from different, you have different source, right?
Yes, indeed. Yeah, so it's not a one way. So obviously there is open source data, which some of you may be aware of. I mean, there are plenty of resources for everyone to use of, World Resources Institute and so forth. But obviously, you know, we're using our in-house, basically our subject matter experts and our in-house expertise. We try to complement it, especially on a localized basis. So this is what you notice when you go to, let's say, a major urban setting. So the name Jakarta, where we do have a lot of experience and a lot of data available, we could then supplement that with localized data, and as well as the partnerships. Okay.
Thank you, Daniel.
And just to close that off, sorry, and we're always open to, you know, we're always welcoming other organizations to talk about such partnerships. So thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. So let's go to Wouter now for your question for you. What are the best performing technologies for plastic removal in terms of percentage, according to your experience? And do you think that these technologies will evolve to help us tackle microplastics in the ocean? That's two questions for you, Wouter.
Thank you for the questions. Let me start with the last question, which is the microplastics. So there's quite a distinction between macroplastic and microplastics. The technology, the decision framework is specifically set up for macroplastics, so the floating pieces in the water, because for removing microplastics, you actually need different kind of technologies, which are, not in this database. You really need to go to membrane filtering, which is normally done in the wastewater treatment plants, for example. So the focus is on macroplastics for this decision support framework. On the technology that is most suited, well, actually, maybe not a very nice answer, but it really depends on your location. And that's why we made up this decision support framework, because there's so many criteria you need to take into account that you very quickly lose the oversight. And to name a few examples, for example, navigation is a key. Is there navigation in your river or waterway or not? Because if there's no navigation, you can close off the whole river. But if there are boats going up and down, you can't do that, impacting greatly on the efficiency of your technology. The other thing which has great impact is the water fluctuation or flow in your river. Some rivers are dry in summer, almost dry, and have huge discharges during the wet season. A lot of technologies are not capable of managing that fluctuation, for example, or get destroyed when there is a storm. It's another example. The last example I want to mention, which is very important, is budget. I mean, it's always possible mostly to find CAPEX for specific technology. And there are very expensive technologies in the market. And sometimes you even have a donor who is willing to pay for it. But then the question is, can you operate it for the next 10 years? And once it breaks down, can you replace it again? So I think it really depends on your local situation. And that's the whole purpose of the decision framework, to guide you through this process.
Yeah, this is why there is a simple answer. So you had to create this DSS system to help the government to answer this question.
Yeah.
May I just ask, in the DSS also, do you provide any cost estimate for the capex and opex, or no? You stopped before?
No, yeah. So there is a criteria on budget availability. So you can fill in your budget, and then some will be filled out. Like if you buy a car, you have Ferraris and you have cheaper technologies available. So yeah, and the same for operational costs. So an annual budget. But we also didn't want to put too much focus on the budget, especially in the beginning, because it's also an exploratory process where you see, okay, what are the available technologies? And how can I play with my budget to make it fit? So I think that's also very important to understand, because some cheaper or low technology solutions are perfectly fine for your location.
Okay. Are you planning to develop further these tools now, or you?
Sorry, I didn't hear your question, Mary.
Are you planning to develop this DSS tool further, or this is?
Yeah, actually, we just got a contract to also maintain and update this tool for the coming year. So we'll have several workshops with stakeholders that are targeted, in this case, by the World Bank, where we ask for concrete feedback. They start using it, and then we will, every quarter, update the tool. And also, when new technologies come to market, we will add them to the database, because it's a very much a startup community as well, and technologies evolve over time. So you keep involved and updating.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Maybe there's some startups also working on this. So let's go to Jiwan for the next question. So how are the homegrown or Asian startups coordinating their efforts, according to you? And do you see a risk of having duplication of efforts also within this environment?
Thank you very much for that question. That's really a good question, and it's a very interesting concept. I'm similar to Wouter. I'm going to start answering from the last question. So the last question is in terms of the risk of duplication. It differs, I guess. At the basic science level, we need we want some level of redundancy, especially in terms of making sure that the fundamental principle holds true or is valid. However, I think these issues in terms of duplication are heightened when we start developing the technology, or say, for example, the startup is ready to spin off from the university, or basically develop their technology. So there's a certain level of due diligence required. However, as other actors can actually contribute to make it easier for them. Say, for example, I can speak for the ASEAN region, wherein ASEAN has put together a harmonization policy for the startups. So this is where they can access like active startups in that space and make it easier for new startups to actually review whatever is there. And then the development of clean tech hubs, I would say, are very important, because it would be the one that would be able to sort of pull them together, a meeting point for all the startups, so that they can see what's there and such. And yes, at the end of the day, the reason we also have these forums, of course, to give a platform to startups to talk about what they're doing, and hopefully heighten the communication between technology developers and the technology that are already out there, so that we can minimize duplication and actually be more efficient in terms of developing or putting out technologies that are ready for uptake. So I hope that answers the questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jiwan. Yeah. Let's go to Amit now. There's two questions for you, Amit, in the chat box. The first one is about you mentioned the example of the Nile and the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. So how do you how can you see this platform working on a transboundary context? How can you help with solving some transboundary issue between states or countries? And the second question for you is also, could hydropower production in the basin be included in the objectives in the model?
Yeah, so I'll start with the second one because that's the easiest answer. So the answer is yes. The hydropower maximization can be achieved by working on this problem statement. And we recently we have participated in Department of Energy United States of America challenge, where we have won the first round to optimize the hydropower production capacity for dams using algorithms. So that's one thing. That challenge is still going on. But what I'm trying to say here is yes, that's very much true, that this algorithm has potential to optimize reservoir performance for hydropower. And the world is looking after it. Because now you understand one thing, that every other sources of energy, if you say for example, if you go for a coal, if you go for the biofuel, if you're talking about solar, there is very limited stakeholders or no stakeholders to conflict with. But as you touch the water, there are various stakeholders, and the entire civilization depends upon water. So you have conflicting interest, and that's where managing those conflicts become challenging. So that's why these mathematical models and learning from machine learning and AI algorithm can help a lot to optimize the hydropower productivity, because that's the need of an hour to go towards net zero carbon emission in energy sector, and also to achieve non-polluting, a renewable energy source to provide its maximum output. That's the answer for the question 2. Now let's come back to question 1, because that's the major concern of it's a matter of the global crisis, I will say, because everywhere it's conflicting. It's not about just Nile Basin, where Egypt has missiles and Ethiopia has installed anti-missile protection system on the Resilience Dam. It's a problem everywhere. Even if in India, we're talking about Brahmaputra Basin, which starts from China, come to India. Then you see Indus Basin, which goes to Afghanistan, Pakistan, India. Then you talk about any other basin in the world where the river is crossing one or more geography, you will find these conflicts. And these conflicts are even more complicated when the different zones has different water yielding capacity. So we have to understand that even though the river basin is a long geographical structure, there are factors which contribute it yields at various points. So might be some areas is yielding more, some areas are not yielding that much. And then, but demands doesn't follow this pattern. Demand has a completely different algorithm. So demand depends upon your population, urbanization, your industrial concentration. So it's very much true that some geographies who are who need more water resources, basically they are not in capacity to contribute to that much water in the basin, right? But they still need those water resources. That's what's happening with Egypt in Nile. So Egypt is in the lowest reach, where Ethiopia is on the highest reach. Ethiopia is generating 80% of water for the Nile River, where Egypt is consuming that much of water for the Nile River because of their urbanization and industrialization and their agriculture demand. So this clearly demands for a transboundary cooperation, and it can only happen when the data sources and the governance happens in a very cohesive manner. So it means there is a need of bringing all these stakeholders together. Obviously, there is a lot of bilateral and multilateral agencies and government level coordination and negotiation talks keep going on. But the IT system has a great potential to do it. Say, for example, we have regulated the entire world foreign exchange, right? Now they are completely regulated. They are no more confusing like it used to happen in 1970s and 80s. The world trade is regulated. This all we have achieved because we have an IT system, a strong IT system, which takes data from all the stakeholders in a very neutral way, provides outcome analysis in a neutral way, understanding each stakeholder demand, their right allocation, and their share on that resource, and providing a right mean so that there is no conflict. So it all happens when the conflicts are not there. So we have to achieve a situation when we agree on how much water we have, how much we are entitled to, and looking at the current year yield perspective, everybody's demand in a homogeneous manner, how much we are accounting for. If we can achieve this state, then the conflict will have no more space and this can be resolved. And that's where we see that our solutions fits in, because we are considering climate change, geographical conditions, demand from each stakeholders, water generation at each point, inflow at each point, the climate risk for flood and drought for each party. And then we bring unified and cohesion in the system to provide the right decision and advisory generally schedule. So that may be a step forward for solving this conflict.
Thank you very much, Amit, for the detailed answer. Indeed, communication and coordination among states and countries is key, and as river doesn't care about borders. So thank you, Amit. Now let's go to Vinod for a question for you, which is, what advice would you give to a water utility that wants to start digitalizing its operations? Oh, you're on mute, Vinod. Yes.
The digital technology is very pervasive now. It's become quite cheap and able to take the data from the various sources and to manage the conflicted demand from the various stakeholders as such. I think which is also true in water utilities as such. I think we have to start with and in mind. And normally what happens is it's a 2-5-25. This terminology we normally use to advise the client. 2 years for plan any project in a water utility, 2 years of planning, 5 years of construction, and 25 to 50 years of operations. But normally when we plan and design the work, we forget about the 25 to 50 years of operations. So we don't have to keep this, and that's where a huge amount of energy, resources, and effort can be saved if you design and construct the way it should be operated. So I think the first thing is that keep in the mind while for the planning, design, and construction. And this is very true for the big cities and the big works where the big works are being done, like the Singapore. We have a $4 billion wastewater plant here being done. So start with those planning, design, construction to 525. Second thing is that also digitalizing the operation is kind of creating a roadmap. This has not many utility has done it. We need to also look at the ROI, the value for money, whether you are digitalizing operations, are you going to get the benefits out of that? We operate 150 water wastewater plant in the US, and we are the contracted in the operators. And using the data what we have created from last 15 years, and we found that we can reduce our energy consumption by 5 to 10% just by doing the data analytics, using that insight and do the action in terms of pump operations, blower operations, and a few chemicals as such. And I think that's idea is to kind of create that framework. How do you use the data throughout the whole life cycle? Create a database, hold a digital twin for the process, and also digital twin for the asset. And this combine this together, create a dashboard, have a benchmark on the similar plants, and then kind of monitor your the actual performance with respect to benchmark, and that will give you the result in terms of commercial predictability, certainty of outcome, and also the compliance with the regulatory requirements.
Thank you, Vinod. So from design to implementation and then to operation and maintenance. That's it. There's a link with all these phases. Thank you all. I think that we have reached the end of our session. So my main takeaway, I would say, from today's and from the 5 presentation is this, that you all show us that you confirm that the latest technologies like artificial intelligence, machine learning, IoT, remote sensing, cloud database, startups, all the examples you showed today can be very powerful tools to help decision makers in efficient and sustainable water management and resource optimization. We also saw that this technology are very useful in developing climate resilience strategies and also help assessing and reducing river pollution. So I really believe these tools will help our Asian and Pacific countries to meet the challenges of climate change, resource scarcity, and rapid urbanization. So I would like to thank the five speakers for the very interesting and interactive presentation today, the audience and also the young water professional rapporteur. And I'm also encouraging every one of you to attend the other session today. It's the last day of the forum, so please join us for this more discussion for tomorrow. Thank you all and goodbye.